honestly sometimes forget just how much work went into this car. Like, it's not just your simple bolt-on R34 front. This took so much effort, and I went through a first and second version before I came to this one. The first one, I actually sat the guards on top of the original Stagea skirt supports, and it just sat way too high. Like, if you've noticed the 34 fronts, the bonnet sits like 100 mil off the windscreen. It looks so bad, and I was like, I can't handle that on this one. So this time round, it's got full S14 front rear-wheel drive chassis this time round, no all-wheel drive towers and stuff, and the pillars have been chopped down about 40 mil, so from nothing to 40 mil, just to bring the height of the guards right down, and then body line added the whole way with the S14 guard. Just crazy amount of work that I actually forgot about, because I've done it. I built this car like 5-6 years ago. It has full S15 dash conversion. I wired in the climate control. These normally have like an X-Navi digital GPS and climate control built in. I wired in a full manual climate control from the Stagea. Cluster works, every warning light, instrument, all works perfectly. I put twin sunroof roof skin on this one. The rear-wheel drive chassis doesn't come out with the sunroof, so I unpicked rear-wheel drive roof off, and then put the twin sunroof all-wheel drive roof on it, and welded the rails up. The rear arches have been modified. It's actually tubbed in the back, tubbed into the doors. This area has been widened as well, just to accommodate the wheels. The towers in the back have been moved inwards to accommodate all suspension points being moved inwards to fit such big wheels. Just so much work that I really forgot about until I put it on the hoist again, and I was like, wow, this thing owes you a lot of time, and it's just sitting there in the carport doing nothing, so it's time to do something with it. So I tracked down a manual gearbox for it, and I thought, you know what, just put a T56 in there. The power that the car has, it really needs a Magnum or a 6060, but a T56 will just go straight in. You don't have to mod the tail shaft, don't have to do any mods, just put it straight in and see if you actually enjoy driving the car manual before you spend any money, because I could drive this thing and still hate it. So soon find out. This car's been sitting in the carport for 2 years, because as soon as the first time I drove it, just hate the sound of automatics, and I was like, this is terrible. Like, I really don't enjoy driving this car, all this work, and it sounds awful. So hopefully it doesn't sound like a ski boat now, and I get some enjoyment out of the car. And obviously the engine bay just needs a little once over, repaint a few things here, change the fuel rails, and this setup, I actually had a blown fuel hose, so that's just another hose I had laying around just to get it running. So I wanted big 6-piston brakes, but the R35 brakes made you have to have 19-inch wheels, whereas these C63 6-piston Brembos came with 18s, but man, it's close. Like, I got the rotor taken down 10 mil just so I can make my caliper brackets, and I reckon you could fit a bit of paper between the rim and the caliper. The rear is obviously much more clearance, but it's a matching caliper front and back. And got a 35 GTR Master, I'm pretty sure, to accommodate, bolted straight on. Funny that this is probably the only car I own with a brake booster and master in the engine bay, because I just tried my hardest to stay simple. I didn't want to go overboard like I normally do and go crazy full shaved bay. I just tried to just keep it neat and simple, and not spiral out of control. Cool, so that's driving height for the car. So just half tire on the front and at rim at the back. So plenty of clearance, that's good. And then air's fully out, so rails touch the ground. Okay, so where did all this start? I got my first Stagea in January 2014, just as a daily tow car, things I could just load parts in the back and use. And didn't really have much luck with the RB. I had a blown bottom end in the first one, so I pulled that out and put an EO in there, and did the whole front swap, started testing things out on there. I realized the wheel arch radius was in the wrong spot, and I extended the bumper, ended changing it to a 33 GDR front bar, and then plastic welded all that to suit, and left the wheel arch radius. I ended up cutting the wheel arch radius to suit. I then sold the wheels off the car, and I bought some KFs and brought them home, and they didn't fit at all. So got the sledgehammer out and just caved the hell out of the guards. And they were rubbing on the coilover. I had to move the coilover inwards, and they just had heaps of camber. It was not great. So the car was really on its last sort of journeys. Really, it was going to get replaced. I was planning to build another one. So I started collecting more Stagea stuff. I had a few at that point. Everything done was really just a learning curve. If I wanted to learn how to do something, I just tried it and see how it worked. And if it didn't work, I just tried it again another way until it did work. The things that really bugged me about bolt-on conversions is the body line disappearing. So that was a crucial one. I had to add the body line in, and the pillar height had to be really dropped down to move the bonnet close to the windscreen because I couldn't handle it being off. So because the RB suffered coil pack issues from the D-Max vent letting water in, I thought the solution to that problem was to put an LS in there and put ITBs out the bonnet. What an idiot. As you can imagine, with a custom conversion, nothing bolted on. No bonnet hinges even bolted on. It's all hybrid, everything. I look back now and I cringe at some of this fab work because I could build the car 200 times better now, but this is what I knew back then, so I just have to deal with it. I did play around with moving the rear door handles because I was going to put suicide rear doors on it, but I ended up not liking the look of the car with the door handle moved. Wiring the car was also another massive headache because there was no wiring diagrams for a Series 1, and a Series 2 wiring diagram was like a hybrid between a 33 and a 34, so it was all just a guess game to get the dash in and figure out what was going to work. It was just continuity test on most of the wires and just figure it all out manually. So everything was going well, it rolled and it was heading in the right direction, and then change of plans, I found a rear-wheel drive shell. So I borrowed my mate Dustin's van. He only worked around the corner, and I went and picked up this white rear-wheel drive shell. And the process started again. Trim everything out on that car, put the front on that, put the rad support on, put the skirt supports on, yada, yada, yada. A mess of spaghetti wiring and testing all the cluster to make sure all the instruments worked. I wanted it all just to work like factory. The front skirt supports are trimmed up higher for wheel clearance so it can actually lay out. So in order to reduce the camber, not have sledgehammer spec squashed Hot Wheels guards, I moved the wheel arch out by cutting the dog leg, pulling it all out where I wanted, adding the swage line back in, and then moving the towers and stuff came later. And because rear-wheel drive ones are like the peasant model, they don't come out with the sunroofs, so I had to pull the sunroof skin off the black one and use all the roof supports and stuff and put that onto the rear-wheel drive shell. I then towed the car to work because I wanted to shave the rain gutters up, so I needed to shape a bit of steel to suit that curve. And once they were infilled and all fully welded and sanded up, I started modifying the skirts. I needed to take 40 mil off the bottom of the skirt's height and adjust the wheel arch radius to suit. I then found the C63 brakes and started making the caliper adapters to suit, front and rear. And then went with GK Tech drop knuckles in the front, Driftworks rear. So I was ready to remove the motor out now so I could start shaving the bay. And I just kept it really simple in the bay. I didn't go overboard like I normally do. I just did tubs and made enough clearance front and back and just shaved a few things here and there, just the towers and things, but I left the brake booster and kept it pretty simple looking. So I got the engine bay painted. The color is a black Mica off a Nissan L Grand, and it flips from green to purple in the light depending on the sun and the angle. The video here shows it perfectly. I kind of wish I stayed silver. It was such an easy color to keep clean. This one, the cars looked worse. As soon as it came out of the booth, it's just got dusty and scratched and just looks worse every day. So motor, rad, AC, condenser, intercooler all back in. Started to do plumbing. So factory wheel tubs cut out, moved inwards, towers moved inwards, and still enough clearance for the factory seat. Went with a double bellow airbag instead of the slim coilover style that was in there because it has a thicker strut and I wanted to tow with the car, so I'd rather it be safe and not snap the strut. I've had one of those struts snap before. Made all the exhaust. It's a 4-inch dump to twin threes with cats and resonators. Just all tigged up and it's painted black. Back on the car. So I loaded the car up and took it to get the outside painted. Got all the quarter windows and stuff removed and then refitted back with fresh rubbers. And started fitting all the sunroof and stuff while it was there before it went home. A few pictures of the car back at the workshop. It's the first time me seeing it sort of semi-assembled. So it's the first time seeing the car outside in the sun, seeing the color flip. The wing is a cut and shut R32 wing, so that I have the Nissan emblem on the brake light. Obviously, it's far from complete here. It's got no side indicators. The wiring's a mess. The interior's half out. Started pulling all the interior apart. So all the trim's pulled off to repaint black. Got the hood liner redone in black. And started reassembling the car. And that's where just problems and more problems and bad luck started emerging. As soon as I put the door cards and stuff back on, I went to move the car one day and had a dead short. And I was like, couldn't figure out this dead short. Chased it for weeks and weeks. Pulled all my wiring out of the car. Chased everything, could never figure this problem out. And one day I took the door card off and everything worked again. So turns out between Series 1 and Series 2, Nissan in their genius decision moved the positive and negative around one way to the other and caused a dead short in the car if you change the window switch from a Series 1 to Series 2. And because I had so many window switches, I just picked up anything and put it in the car. And so yeah, I never would have figured that out. First drive of the car, it wasn't tuned. I could only just pretty much idle. I couldn't really press the throttle at all. I was really pushing to get the car to an event, halfway hangs, and I got let down by the tail shaft guy. He made the tail shaft 100mm too short, and then the windscreen. The first one arrived cracked. The second one arrived cracked, and I watched the guy pull the third one out of his van, and I thought, I hope this thing's not cracked. It was the last one in the country. And thankfully, it wasn't cracked, so I just walked away because I thought, I'm not watching them fit this and crack it. And the number plate debacle, I handed the number plates in to be put on storage, which you pay for in Australia, and I paid storage for 2 years. And I went to go get the plates from the RTA, and the lady was like, oh. And I'm like, oh, what's up? She's like, is this the RTA you handed them in at? I'm like, yep, 2 years ago. Anyway, long story short, they got destroyed when I handed them in, so I had to reorder the plates, which cost me again. So yeah, missed out on that, going to that event. The car couldn't be regoed. It was just a massive pain in the ass. So I was really starting to get a sour taste in my mouth for the car. The fuel light had been on in the car for a while, and I went for a drive around the block and I ran out of fuel. So I was like, oh well, the fuel light actually does work. It's not just coming on for the sake of it. Still on the test drive sort of process, just weeding out little issues here and there. And there was a car show on around the corner from the workshop, so I thought, let's go to it. So I went to this car show, and there were some really, really nice cars there. And I was surprised to take home this award, which I don't think the car deserved. There were so many nicer cars there. So I was moving states at the time, and I was loading up things to do a trip, and the spare wheel bounced off my trailer. It was just resting against, bounced into the side of the door and caved the door in. So the car had been sitting around for 3+ years at this time. I didn't really have much interest for it. after driving it a bit. I hate the sound of automatics. I think they sound like a slipping ski boat. So I just sort of lost interest in the car and just sort of parked it, just let it sit. And it was a really windy day, and I had a bit of steel on top of the roof holding the car cover down, and it actually blew off and smashed into the center of the bonnet, put a massive dent in the bonnet, cracked all the paint. So I thought, just don't put a car cover on anymore, whatever. I got sick of walking outside and looking at the car. So I thought, I'm going to find a manual gearbox for this. So I ended up swapping the built auto 2800 stall, B&M shifter, B&M cooler, rah, swapped that for a T56. So the gearbox is in, exhaust all rocked up. I had to get a new shifter and customize the shifter to suit. Sensor fell out when I pulled the gearbox out, and I thought, oh my god, really? Snapped it off. But no, it's still in the motor, so don't know where this came from, but whatever. I have no room in the engine bay for a clutch master, and I didn't want to cut or paint the engine bay, so I just made an under dash setup. So to get to the clutch master, really easy. Pop the plastic surround back, drop the column down, column goes down, 3 screws in the cluster, and then my cluster wiring's been extended so that I can pull the entire thing out, and there it is down there. Happy days. I think with the tailgate, because it's already caved in, I'm just going to get rid of this garnish area and just continue that shape the whole way along it, so the plate's recessed in nice, and then just make this out of steel that holds the handle. No point having this plastic garnish, just make it blend right into it. This thing's surprisingly neat under here. I forgot that I actually did a decent job on the exhaust, and like putting the compressors are hidden up above the cradle. So just wheel alignment and a few other little checkovers now, nut and bolt checkover, and hopefully I can test drive it. So this is how the car sits at driving height. Sits rim to guard, nice and flush, and it can air out completely, or it can raise up to about just above tyre. It raises up about 1 inch. That's all the travel I get out of the back. The front sits at half tyre. Obviously you can't see because I've got no wheel on it, but I didn't like that 90% of bagged cars look terrible when they're aired up and driving. I've set this car up so it looks like it's static when it's driving, and it airs out and touches the rails completely on the ground when you air it out, because I felt like there's no point of having an airbagged car if it doesn't touch the ground. It's just like, you may as well just be static. All my other cars are static 30mm sill, but I feel like this one may as well have it a little bit more practical if I need to get up driveways and stuff like that. At least I can air up a little bit, but it's not like it's fake low. The car's actually still slammed when it's driving, but it can actually air out and touch the floor. So I'm at the point now where the manual box is in. I'm ready to start running it through the gears on the hoist, just to make sure everything works well. This hose, amongst many other things in this engine bay, has been bugging me, but this one actually burst. I just had like a normal one that linked across the 2 fuel rails, as you see on every LS, but yeah, it burst on me. So this is just what I had laying around just to get it drivable again. So time to get rid of that because it's so ugly. So the crossover's been changed back now to something that's not that ugly. So I've just got to put the T-block back in here and the one-way valve for the brake booster, just to get rid of these ugly hoses. I think they were temporary for some troubleshooting thing I had, but the heater hoses as well, they're linked. I've got to replace the little fittings on the actual heater core itself. I snapped them off before I can hook those back up properly, but just lots of little tidy up things in the bay to go over. Another question I get asked a lot is, why is there an LS in there? How come I didn't go RB, rah rah? I had RB in the first one, it towed terribly, blew bottom end due to oil pump starvation, I'm assuming, and I put a Neo in there. Still towed pretty bad, terrible on fuel, didn't really have any power, so I thought, just put a V8 in there, at least it drives around normal off boost, plenty of power on tap, and if you want power, just stand on it, and it makes enough. So the car is filthy at the moment, but there's a big dent under here from the car cover piece flying off and smashing the bonnet. So I've got to get that repainted. I don't really want to wash the car and get water under the paint, so that's just why it's filthy at the moment. And I haven't put these side trims back on yet because their guards are probably going to get repainted with the bonnet and probably blend up the doors. The door's got a massive dent from the spare wheel of my trailer came off and just bounced against the side of the car, and it scuffed up the side of the door here as well. So a lot of little things just to tidy up. For the inside, I obviously want to get the seats just tidied up and retrimmed. There's a few little burns and stuff there, and then get the door cards in confetti to match. And I've got to put the S14 ignition barrel on this column so that I can put the S15 plastics on here. The key is actually 90 degrees instead of where it is there. So I've just hacked apart the Stagea cluster just until I get one. So yeah, just a quick little overview, wrap up video of what's the current state of the car, what's happening with it, does it still exist, what's the plans. It's yeah, it's going to head to the paint shop, get all these little issues fixed up, and then now that it's manual, I might actually enjoy driving it. Time will tell, and probably take it to some events and enjoy the car, put the trailer on the back, take my other cars somewhere, go pick up marketplace finds, maybe just use the car just instead of it sitting in the carport for 2 years. So yeah, that's that. We'll probably post as soon as it's finished.